Hello, so this is my presentation. Let's get right into it. So this is the sheet that I'm going to be referencing on. That's all there is. So first and foremost, what is disease? The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines disease as a condition of an animal or a plant or one of its body parts that impairs normal functioning and is typically manifested by distinguishing signs and symptoms. And sometimes these groups of consistently occurring symptoms can be defined as a syndrome. What are signs and symptoms, and what is the difference between the two? Signs is basically what can be seen by a provider in the clinical setting. This can be qualitative or quantitative. For example, a provider seeing a rash on somebody's body, or listening to lung sounds and seeing rales or wheezing, or it can be hypertension, hypo or hyperglycemia, what have you. When a provider collects these signs and symptoms, then what is often moved on to is diagnostic testing to start a differential, starting to figure out a diagnosis. This can be blood work, ultrasounds, biopsies of masses if need be, MRI scans, things of that nature. And once that occurs, a diagnosis can be made. Now, a diagnosis is pretty much defined as an inference based off of signs and symptoms that are presented in the clinical setting. And once that diagnosis can be created and the patient is informed of this, we start moving on to probably an incredibly important part of being a provider, which is patient education. It can be split up into three major parts when educating a patient on a diagnosis that they've just received. The etiology of the disease. This is basically the mechanism of the disease, if it's genetic, if it's environmental, things like that, how it kind of comes about. Then we move on to the second part, which is the pathogenesis of the disease. This is basically taking the time to explain the mechanism of the disease and how these mechanisms within the body lead to the presenting symptoms and signs in the patient that they are experiencing at this time. And then third, most importantly, the prognosis. This is, in my opinion at least, a very essential part of patient education, where the provider will take the time to speak with the patient and possibly the family if need be about how these symptoms will progress and how it will affect daily life functioning. This is a point in time where somebody has to speak very plainly and make it very known what should the expectations be now that this person has been diagnosed with this disease. This can also be an opportunity to create a care plan with the patient or with the family about managing symptoms, if there's a possibility of a cure or anything, or any kind of ways to help cure from this disease with any medical interventions and what have you, or to help manage symptoms if it is more of a chronic, lifelong, long-term disease that they are dealing with at this time. Yeah, and that is my presentation and all of the major things for this assignment. Yes.